This is a rage video. R for rage. Also because this is a rated R content video. But this video is rated R. That's why it's called rated R. And I'm very busy right now, but I did need to make this video with this content because I believe the more I make videos like this, the more it will set a precedence for videos that are of even better quality with a lot more details so that I can direct people back to previous videos. So, this is a fucking rage video. It is not the normative, and that's why this one comes with the warning label, unlike a lot of other videos. So this is a fucking rage video. I'm really pissed off after this channel got fucking spammed by some asshole who said, "Why are you using the holy name of the boon to, be an anti-Semite?" Not anti-Semitic. I'm very proud of being Jewish, actually. Every Boonist is proud of being Jewish. Dr. Weisfeld's proud of being Jewish. Yeah. So, fuck off with that. And also, the Bund is not anti-religious, I will say that. And in a lot of aspects, even pro-religious, but precisely the Bund is non-religious. The Bund is a political concept. So, holy name of the Bund? Fucking troll. Go fuck off, really. Anyway, you've got the disclaimer out here. This is the disclaimer. This is a fucking rage video. You don't have to watch this one. But this one will have a lot of information about the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And it is a genocide. Not in our name.
Ground zero to Israel. 5, 6, 7, 8. Israel is not a Jewish state.
We are here in Washington, D.C. because there is a rally for the state of Israel. And we have come, thank God, a lot of rabbis and many of the laymen of the Jewish community simply to speak up and let the world know that with the help of the Almighty, because we are Jews, we will never be silent. Our religion is to serve God. The Zionism is a transformation to nationalism. It's a mere 150-year-old movement and 75-year state, while my religion is 3,000 years. My religion is not to occupy and steal and kill. My religion is to be subservient to God, not to kill and steal, to do kindness, to do charity, to show gratefulness to the people who've done us such good as the Muslim people did in the Arab lands for hundreds of years. How dare the Zionists steal my name, steal the name Israel, steal the Star of David, and vilify and declare that the Muslims hate the Jews because they have a different religion. That is repugnant. That is not true. It was the Muslims who took us in. How dare they bomb, kill, and mass murder in Gaza? How dare they do for 75 years, killing the people of Palestine and the Jews, the 1,400 people or whatever the number was in next to Gaza. Jews is all because they occupied. Why are they trying to insult the intelligence of the world? Why does the world let themselves be insulted, or their intelligence insulted, when you clearly see that we lived in harmony for so many hundreds of years, and the only change that happened in the Holy Land is the creation of the state, and since then there's Muslims, Arabs, Palestinians, and Jews dying in the thousands and tens of thousands. People, stop going in lockstep with the Zionists. Stop going in lockstep or being intimidated by the state of Israel. It is not anti-Semitic to speak against the state. The state of Israel is anti-Semitism personified. They are anti-Semitism. They are the cause of blood, the rivers of blood. They are the ones who have caused hate. They are the ones who are misrepresenting the real Jewish religion. They have no right. They go with their bare heads and create a state and declare it Jewish. How come they can insult the intelligence of the world? This is a political state that the rabbis all opposed, and we will always oppose, and we get thousands and tens of thousands opposed to the streets of Jerusalem. We get brutally beaten, and the world is silent. Simply old men and young children, because we stand up and say the state of Israel is criminal rebellion against God. God help, bring an end to this immediate end to the death, to the slaughter of the people of Gaza, to the slaughter of people of Palestine, to the occupation. God help, the world should wake up, and just like apartheid, they stood up and made the political leaders stop supporting their apartheid. So we urge everybody, stand up. You are not anti-Semitic by opposing the state, only by supporting it. Let us stop, God help, the murder of Gaza, the murder in Palestine, a free Palestine, so as Jews we can embrace and live together in peace as we've had for hundreds of years, inshallah, sooner nowadays.
Hundreds of righteous religious Jewry counter-protest at a pro-Israeli rally on November 14th, 2023 in Washington, D.C. The man, the speaker you heard just now, is Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss of Neturei Karta International, explaining the motive of the demonstration. I need to start with I need to preface this all, by the way, with something that some people seem to have forgotten. The Bund is not religious. Now, let me explain. Yes, the Jewish nation, for better or for worse, is a cultural religious group. That is the Jewish nation. We are a cultural religious group. Judaism is not just a religion, it is also a culture as well. And there are a lot of Jewish people who overemphasize the religious aspect, and then there are Jewish people who overemphasize the cultural aspect. And then there are those who are aware that they're both intertwined. Regardless, the Jewish nation is grafted together through, history and through a lot of shared values. There were a lot of split-ups that occurred, which is why you got Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism, and Reconstructionist Judaism. And within the Orthodox, there's typically the Ultra-Orthodox, which Neturei Karta would count as, and the Modern Orthodox. Now, the Modern Orthodox typically reject the Mizora. But as bad as that sounds to a lot of people, you know, it makes sense in a sense, you know, like it gets complicated, and a lot of Jewish people will accuse other Jewish people of being less educated than themselves. I know I've done that, but I've also heard the same accusation thrown at me, and I would say both the accusations that I threw at certain Jewish people and the one thrown at me, which is the same exact one, is true. One of our problems today is that we Jewish people are not listening to themselves. We're not listening to each other. Like, there's a lot of things in Judaism that a lot of Jewish people remain unaware of, and it shouldn't be this way. We should all be studying Judaism together. Like, Orthodox Judaism, in my eyes, itself is a multiple choice religion. I mean, it's not like Hinduism in that sense of a multiple choice religion, you know, where you could have completely different versions of what happened in some sense, you know, in your historical myths. But with us, you know, like, which avenue of practice we take is going to be multiple choice. I've discussed this with Dr. Weisfeld. I've discussed this actually with rabbis. But you'll notice that the Jewish people, you know, a lot of people get confused because, like, well, Judaism's a religion, and that there's Jewish people who are not really practicing Judaism. And I wouldn't say, like, one of the things I laugh about is I challenge that. It's like, no, they're practicing Judaism. The question is, are they religiously observant? And a lot of times, no. A lot of Jewish people are not religiously observant. There are Jewish people who are atheists. There are Jewish people who are agnostic, but they remain Jewish because their mothers were Jewish, which is really what counts. If your father's Jewish and your mother's not Jewish, you're not really Jewish. Although you could have Jewishness. And anyone with good news for those who I would say are not Jewish but do have Jewishness, Dr. Weisfeld accepts such people as Jewish. So, you know, that's a plus on that side. This video is going to feature Dr. Weisfeld. As you can see, this video is called Rated R. And a lot of this is really just an angry video. This is not going to be the norm, but this is a very angry video. I'm very angry right now. I've been dealing with a lot. I'm doing a lot of work right now. I'm not only building more than one special series for this channel, but I'm also doing a lot of work with protesters, and there has been arrests and no, reports, and I'm not going to say anything about it because I learned my lesson after May 27, 2019. No matter how real something is, no matter how much you know something has happened, no one's going to believe it. So I'm not going to get into any details about my whereabouts without a fucking camera. And I do have a camera, which is another thing I thank Dr. Weisfeld for, is that I have a camera now. So I'll give you an example of something. If you take the Mizora seriously in any capacity, and by the way, that's the divine authority to make edicts and sanctions for the Jewish people, which only Neturei Karta has this. But if you take it seriously, Amalek is the state of Israel. The Amalek, by the way, is the eternal enemy of the Jewish people. Now, the Samaritans in their texts, they don't actually reference Amalek. And this is why I get angry when people are like, you believe in genociding people because your scripture says so. And I've tried to explain, on the academic side of it, that would be a fabrication, by the way, the whole Amalek thing. And on the theological context, Amalek is actually something from within, not outside. Amalek comes from within. If you get into Rashi and his practices, Rashi condemned Jewish people who cheated non-Jewish people as serving the nation of Amalek. And, Amalek, by the way, was born from the seed of Abraham. But he's mentioned in the scriptures before his birth. So obviously, Amalek is not necessarily a definitive ethnic group of people. And this gets into another thing. Judaism is not and has never been based on ethnicity. The first Jewish people were the Israelites, that's true. And they would technically count as an ethnic group. However, they were a particular type of ethnic group. They were a tribal group. And while tribes have a lot to do with ethnicity, tribes can transcend ethnicity. Ruth, for instance, was a convert to Judaism. King David is descent from Ruth. King David is considered by majority of Jewish people the first Messiah. And that gets into another thing, is how our concept of Messiah, it radically departs from that of both the Christians and the Muslims. This video is not here to attack Christians or Muslims. Although Western Christians really need to look up the information about boarding schools and what was done to Native Americans in the name of Christ, and then wonder why a lot of Native Americans are going back to their traditions and burning, down their churches. I think this is good. It's funny. This is how off the mark we are. If you took Judaism seriously, you wouldn't try to make people Noahides. You'd go out and look for the Noahide nations. The Noahides are those that follow the 7 laws of Noah. Guess who organically follows the 7 laws of Noah like nobody else? Native Americans and First Nations. Yep, they do it. So, we can see, just like if you take Judaism as seriously as I do, you'd have to look at the entire Jewish nation and say, we're not doing what we're supposed to do. We're not doing the very purpose of our existence. Being a light unto the nations, tikkun olam. Now, this has become very difficult to talk to more and more, like how deep this runs in our culture to communists, although there are some exceptions. And if I rant about my current frustrations, long story short, there used to be a lot of Maoists out here, but they weren't from here. I'm in Arizona. They weren't from here. And they did help a lot, and then they fucking up and left. For reasons, and I don't want to get into that fucking drama, but if you look back at the Free Palestine movement, it took a long time for the communists to join that. It took a long time. Dr. Weisfeld has noticed this. I have noticed this. Every Bundist has noticed this. Now, in case you haven't noticed, there's been largely an absence of speaking of Donna Newman. I will bring her up again, and bring stuff in, but Donna Newman has been largely excommunicated by both me and Dr. Weisfeld, and we have our reasons for that. So, this video is about perspective. This video may be too graphic for younger people. That is why it is called Rated R. This next video is from Luke Dublin, the Anglicist. And his views on the situation stands by me. And by the way, before anybody tries to throw something on me that's not true, I'm a big fan of Yasser Arafat, just to be clear. But the fact is, Yasser Arafat screwed up, failed miserably when he signed with the Oslo. The Oslo Accords was death upon the Palestinians. And I'm very angry right now. And now I'm going to turn you over to a real communist, a real Maoist, in fact, who is just as angry about this as me. Oh, and he's Irish to boot, so he's not white. If you get into the Europeans, there are only 2 Europeans who know how to remove the assimilation of whiteness: Jewish Europeans and Irish people, and nobody else. You should be learning from Jewish Europeans and Irish people if you are European and you think you're white. I'm after being accused of being responsible for what is being done in Gaza by several people out here, and then also being yelled at for not being a good Jew, for supporting the Amalek state. I'm in a very jaded mood, and I'm actually going to give a little bit of a spoiler here. This video is going to contain a video with Dr. Weisfeld in it. And what I'm appalled at is that he's by himself. He's by himself. That's disgraceful. There should be several people with him in front of the Jewish Center. There should be several people there with him, in support with him. Inshallah, he will not be alone as he continues to protest over there. But, I'm going to indict Canada here. Canada is a cowardly country. The people are cowardly. Just as the American population is basically one that dreams and fantasizes and jacks off literally to fascism and genocide. Canada is all about cowardice. Screw North America. Anyway, like I said, this video is called Rated R, and I do intend that the following videos will not be so angry, but this is an angry, pissed off video. It's rated R. This video is not for children. Free Palestine.
Hello, comrades and cadres, this is the Engelsist here, and there's little I find more frustrating than people with goldfish memory. Accusations of the phrase "from the river to the sea" as being racist are baseless and have no foundation in history. The previous state before this current situation of apartheid, there was such a thing as Palestine. It was a British colony. And the reason that this land was given away is because of the British government. And they are the source of this fault. And everybody knows it, at least if you've checked your history books. There were Jews settled in Palestine previously, before the 1940s and 30s. In fact, there were a lot of Jews that were killed by the state of Israel, if any of you don't know. So the accusation that Palestine has always been unkind to Jews is fucking bullshit. And the phrase "from the river to the sea," there is no negotiation with the Netanyahu government. In fact, there's no negotiation with any form of the government. Yasser Arafat did reach a ceasefire. He did put down the PLO's arms, and Fatah was made a political party, and it did nothing. They killed so many more people. It continued, because once you put down the gun, you have no bargaining power. Palestinian Authority has been unable to do anything to help the ailment of the Palestinian people. And the idea that there is any compromise is fucking bullshit. Israel has been bombing hospitals. This is not about support for Hamas. Hamas are a complicated organization. However, it is about the injustices. Hamas is a necessary organization to prevent genocide for the Palestinians and genocide in Gaza. And still it's happening. Regardless of Hamas's ability to help or not, genocide is happening to the Palestinians. There is no such thing as a ceasefire or a compromise in this. There is no two-state solution. There is no peaceful coexistence, not whilst the boot heel of the state of Israel is on the neck of every Palestinian person, every single Mizrahi Jew, every single black Jew that they killed to hold up this horrendous nation state. Viva, viva, Palestina!
That was Luke Dublin, the Engelsist. What you just saw came out on November 13th of this year of 2023. Let's go straight into something from the Electric Intifada, which came out on November 12th, 2023.
So it's really a month since October 7th, and it does feel in a way like, ages ago. But I want to read you this quote from Benjamin Netanyahu, which was this was published in the Times of Israel on October 11th, but he may have made this comment a day earlier or 2 days earlier, but it was in the immediate aftermath of October 7th. And he said, this is a direct quote from Netanyahu: "They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them. They beheaded soldiers. They mowed down these youngsters who came to a nature festival, put 5 jeeps around this depression in the soil, and like Babin Yar, they mowed them down, making sure they killed everybody." That's what Benjamin Netanyahu said. Babin Yar, of course, was one of the biggest single massacres of the Holocaust in Ukraine, where Ukrainian nationalists and Germany carried out that massacre. not a single sentence of that statement has been substantiated by Israel. Not a single claim. Not the beheaded babies, not the mass execution over a pit, not the burned bodies. We've talked about this on this live stream and in our articles about how, in fact, the evidence that's coming out is that many, if not most, of the Israeli civilians were killed by Israeli forces just going in and indiscriminately shooting everything. But those claims from Netanyahu and from others were what defined the public mood. And now nobody is going back. Nobody in the Western media or Western politicians are going back to Netanyahu and saying, wait, you said all this. Where's the evidence?
Yeah.
It just doesn't get revisited. It's treated as if it's somehow true. Now, the point I want to come to, you mentioned bubbles, Louis. I wonder if what happened is this, that the bubble, that the Israelis too exist in a bubble. And that bubble is, first of all, their own settler colonial psychopathy, where they just can't feel empathy for anyone other than themselves. And the bubble of Western elites, of the United States government, the European Union, the British government, where everybody was telling them, we have 100%, we support you, go in, do what you want. You know, the Germans who are crying all the time about never again, and remembrance culture and lessons of history, told them, you go in and do whatever you want. We have your back. Whether the Israelis are also in a bubble where they just could not understand what the global reaction would be, and that how their propaganda could not carry them beyond those first initial days when the media was in a shock. And that's, of course, not to say, as I said, you know, we're not seeing all of this translated into political action.
All across the world, Jewish people are being arrested for showing their opposition, their distrust, their protests, their grievances, basically just the discontent with this Zionist state which claims to be Jewish. I'm still just angry about the fact that the majority of opposition to Judaism throughout the world is actually Zionism. Like, Zionists actually oppose Judaism. Like, this is something that should be common knowledge, but it isn't. And it's not because the information isn't out there. It's the fact that people don't want to take proper accountability. People will just like, well, this is the fault of Jewish people, but it's not our fault, actually. The only thing that is our fault is not doing all that we can to oppose Zionism. So in that sense, we do bear a responsibility that the opposition we have towards Zionism should have been stronger a long time ago. However, you cannot forget the fact that Jewish people had been severely manipulated emotionally after the Holocaust to embrace Zionism. Of course, Zionism wasn't as popular then yet either, though. Like, it wasn't really until the 1980s that real mass support for the state of Israel from Jewish people happened. And that is largely due to the Reagan-Thatcher legacy and how that worked, and, you know, preying on the fears of communism, some of which is completely bullshit and like fairy tale, and then other times not as much false as one, like a lot of communists try to say. I'll give you an example. Hakim, great communist speaker, actually pointed out that, and anybody who knows about Hakim and his channel, he's a communist. He's a real communist in the third world, mind you, and he defends the credibility of the Soviet Union, you know, all the time. But he also had said quite openly that the Soviet Union had strong repression towards Islam. This is one of the reasons why I will never be a communist, and I'm proud to say that I am not a communist, that I am a real socialist. We don't even freaking know what communism would look like, honestly. Like, And yet, you know, there's always justifications for breaking the human spirit and going against orientation. Mind you, religiosity is just as much a matter of orientation as sexual orientation, such as homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, lesbian. These should be seen in the same measure. You know, but going in and disrupting people's family traditions is more important to a lot of communists. Now, I'm not trying to bash the communists. It's just that it's just so funny that the majority of you are nothing but online LARPers, you know, and the people on the ground really can't stand the taste of communism usually. I mean, unless you count the anarchists as communists, which I do. And they're really cool, except for the part where they're utopian. Sorry, bad day. Anyway, so this next clip actually has Dr. Weisfeld in it, and this took place on November 12th, 2023.
Here we are at the Jewish Community Center, or whatever its name is. Hello there. So this is Sanish Fanatic is what my mother told me, you know, when I was a kid. And it applies in this case, you know, to the Zionists. Okay. What?
Stop filming me. I'm not allowed.
I'm not filming you. I'm filming the sign. Not in our name is the English sign. It says, one Holocaust does not justify another. This is in the name of the Jewish Socialist Bund. And here we have the Jewish Antifa, Jewish Anti-Fascist Action. Okay. Now, okay, what are some of the comments that I've received so far? Why don't you go there? One guy said. So I said I did. Yeah, I have been going there, and he says stay there. Okay, big deal. And another one says I look suspicious, and I say, yeah, I look Jewish, you know. Not in our name. Mr. Finzeranume. One Holocaust does not justify another Holocaust, does it? Not in our name. This security guard is really uptight. He's upset that I've gotten the right to demonstrate here. A lot of traffic, so everybody sees a sign. Both directions. 2 bus lines. Not in our name. Not in our name. Okay, that's enough for now. See you later. Oh yeah, well, where's everybody else? Okay, everybody else is at the big demonstration downtown. Should be about 50,000 now. There's the City Bronfman Center gallery. Not in our name. Nicht auf unsere Nummer. That's Yiddish for not in our name. Okay, so you didn't figure it out? Oh, big party time here. Let's see, what do we have? Children's toys.
Get away from me.
Why? I have a right to be here. Why are you so antagonistic?
Because I don't know what you're doing.
I'm protesting, obviously,
What are you protesting?
against the genocide in Gaza. And the 5,000 kids who are killed now already. They're not going to get these toys, are they? My. Yeah, I only have 1 police car today instead of 3 like last week. Okay, bye for now.
Next up, we have this video from Al Jazeera, which came out on October 9th, 2023. What you're about to see is going to be very graphic. So this has everything to do with why the name of this video is rated R. Because this would be considered to certain people rated R content. Now that can be disputed, you know, on whose agenda are we censoring this from young minds, you know, sort of thing, you know, yada yada. But even from the source material I got, this is considered too graphic for people under the age of 18. Which is probably bullshit, but nonetheless, you know, this video is safe. It's safe by calling itself rated R. Not this whole video, but the presentation which is coming next, which came out on October 9th, 2023.
It is 1900 GMT, that is 10 p.m. in Gaza, in Jerusalem, and in the West Bank. Now in Gaza, Palestinian homes continue to be targeted by airstrikes. An Israeli army spokesman has described it as the largest ever bombardment of Gaza. We've also heard from the spokesman of Hamas's military wing. He said that the group will begin executing Israeli captives if Israel bombs civilian houses in Gaza without any pre-warning. And speaking just a few minutes ago, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that a number of Palestinian gunmen are still active inside Israel. Now, a warning to our viewers that the pictures you're about to see from Gaza and from the destruction that took place today are disturbing. These are the scenes from Jabalia neighborhood in the north of the Gaza Strip. There are reports of mass casualties there. 687 Palestinians, including 140 children, and 900 Israelis have been killed in the most serious escalation in violence in decades. Israel has also declared a total blockade of the Gaza Strip. That means cutting off food, fuel, water, and electricity. Palestine's health ministry says Israeli strikes are targeting hospitals. The Jabalia camp is the largest of 8 refugee camps in the Strip, densely packed with more than 116,000 refugees. Not too far away from the camp is a UN-run elementary school, though it was not impacted by Monday's airstrike. It is still not clear how many people died in that strike in Jabalia. Let's take a closer look at how events unfolded in Gaza. Rasul Serdar reports.
No electricity, no food, no water, no fuel for Gaza, says Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Home to nearly 2.5 million people, the Gaza Strip has been under an air, land and sea blockade imposed by Israel since 2007. But now it has even cut off the basics. The Israeli army is bombarding the besieged enclave after Hamas's unprecedented attack on Israel. Israel hit more than 1,000 targets in Gaza, including airstrikes that leveled much of the town of Beit Hanun in the enclave's northeast corner. Israel formally declared war on Gaza on Sunday and is promising more destruction.
We're fighting against human animals, and we're acting accordingly.
Israeli airstrikes also targeted Jabalia, the largest of the Gaza Strip's 8 refugee camps. The camp is only 1.4 square kilometers in size, but it is home to nearly 120,000 Palestinians.
We're here in the heart of Jabalia. As you can see, the destruction in the camp. We're here in the Trans Roundabout. As you can see, dozens have been murdered. This is what's happening in Gaza.
Destruction is everywhere in Gaza. Once bustling with worshippers, this mosque is now barely recognizable from air. Civilians are mainly the ones who are paying the price. Hundreds have already been killed and thousands injured. Those who survived now have nowhere to go.
I live in a house away from my family. I ran away from home at 1 o'clock in the morning, along with my child and my wife. We escaped from being targeted and came to another targeted place. We were surprised by everything, as fire and flames were thrown at us. There is no safe place in the Gaza Strip.
Gaza, one of the most densely populated areas in the world, has one of the poorest infrastructures due to the Israeli blockade. What is left of residential areas, towers, hospitals, and the whole infrastructure is being destroyed now. Gaza has seen several wars, but Palestinians say Israeli attacks on the city are now turning into a collective punishment. Resul Serdar, Al Jazeera.
Tarek Abu Azum, you are live inside Gaza and can tell us what you're seeing, what you're hearing. Since I last spoke to you, we all saw multiple bombardments on Gaza. What can you tell us at this stage?
Well, the bombardment of the Gaza Strip continues despite the warning that has been released by the official spokesman of the militant group Hamas, saying that after the destruction of every Palestinian house without pre-warnings, an Israeli captive will be executed. Now, the Israeli occupation forces during the past hours leveled to the ground two residential buildings in the cities of Khan Younis and Rafah, southern the Gaza Strip, which put us in a very clear option that we might see in the next hours the scenes and the photos of execution that might be spread on the social media platforms as well. Now, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Education, the Palestinian Ministry of Health inside the Gaza Strip, the number of Palestinians killed has jumped severely to reach around 687 killed. The majority of those were children, including 140 kids and more than 100 women. And the rate also of the wounded people had approximately jumped to reach around 3,726 wounded citizens inside the Gaza Strip. 10% of those were kids. Now, the Gaza Strip has witnessed during the last hour a number of airstrikes, specifically that the main central medical complex inside the Gaza Strip, Shifa Hospital, was partially affected from the Israeli ongoing attacks, that the roof of one of the medical rooms had fallen over the patient's head, and even the medical capacity of the hospital is not yet enough to receive more cases inside the hospital, and that really adds such a great pressure to the medical capabilities of the enclave to tolerate the incoming hours and even to accept more, let's say, cases. Now, before we go live on right now, the Israeli occupation announced that water will be cut from the Gaza Strip. Now, no water supplies will be provided to the Gaza Strip. Added to that, that even the fuel supply to the Gaza Strip was suspended throughout the shuttering of areas and Kerem Shalom borders. Even the Egyptian side did not provide till this current moment any medical or even humanitarian help to the Gaza Strip, which really can accelerate and exacerbate the current conditions of Palestinians, the majority of them are displaced and the others are absolutely live in threat.
About that, Tarek, and I know it's difficult to put a number on this, or do you know how long most residents in Gaza will be able to hold out with no more food and water coming into the Gaza Strip?
Well, the Gaza Strip is experiencing a great shortage of necessities and even essential items. Now, the Gaza Strip can appear up for the coming few days, but if this crisis will last for a long time, the ability of the Gaza Strip to bear up the current situation won't remain for a long time, due to the fact that the Israeli occupation is very keen to deteriorate the economic and even the humanitarian condition in the Gaza Gaza Strip. Now, the majority of crossing borders are controlled by the Israeli side, and in fact, the Israeli authorities, since the early eruption of this round of fighting between both parts, prevented the entry of essential items such as fuel or even medical necessities for the medical field. Also, different calls have been released. Oh my gosh! Oh! That's really strong right now. A building has been leveled to the ground inside the Gaza Strip, in fact, in front of our eyes right now.
We're seeing it, I think, on a slight delay
from time another, and the fumes right now is just getting out from the place right now.
Yeah, Tarek, I think we're seeing, and the camera's moving now, what you just described. We're probably on a 10-second delay. That's often the case with these feeds. Can you tell us where roughly in the Gaza Strip that might have happened, just based on what you're hearing and where you're standing?
Right, we are standing right now on the coastal line of the Gaza Strip, the main coastal street in the Gaza Strip near the beach. Absolutely, this airstrike was close to the compound of Ansar, which is close to the governmental compound inside the Gaza Strip. Now, the explosion was severe, and even the fumes of the explosion now is just getting out from the place.
So, Tarek, I have to ask you, because we opened this hour, obviously carrying the news that Hamas's military wing had said that each time a civilian home is bombed by Israel in the Gaza Strip, without prior warning, they would execute one of the people that they're holding captives. Do you have any idea if the multiple targets that we've seen hit over the last hours on this live feed, do you have any idea if they have been receiving those warnings?
Well, till this current moment, there is no any proof that or evidence that the destroyed houses receive warnings or not, because no official authorities has announced that. But it could be really clear in the coming hours if there is any execution will be carried out for any of the Israeli captives. It will be a clear sign that one of the buildings really did not receive any kinds of pre-warnings. But to this current moment, usually the Israeli army try to strike the house with a small missile in order to warn its dwellers to evacuate. But at the current moment, the majority of houses are being hit directly without even sending any pre-warning. So it could be sometimes hard to determine if this house could be clearly received any warning before the time of striking.
Yeah, look, that's a very useful reminder, because some of our viewers will know this, others won't, that often, not always, but often there is a warning strike. Sometimes it's a phone call by the Israelis themselves to the area or the building that they're about to hit, and sometimes it's a warning strike that gives people just a few minutes, just a short amount of time to leave the area before the real strike, before the missile that delivers the actual payload that does all the destruction. Tarek Abu Azoum, live for us inside Gaza. Thank you very much for all your reporting. We'll come back to you. Now, there's been a flare-up also on a separate front that we have to tell you about. That's on Israel's border with Lebanon. The Palestinian armed group Islamic Jihad has claimed responsibility for an incursion into northern Israel from Lebanon. And separately, Lebanon's Hezbollah says 5 of its members were killed during Israeli shelling in southern Lebanon, and a vast forest fire began on the Israeli side of the border near Lebanon after the confrontations. It's unclear at this moment how the fire started. Ali Hashem is joining us live from southern Lebanon. Ali, I think all of this really begs for some explanation on who's doing what, where, and what the possible repercussions might be. So let's start, first of all, with the fires. Let's start there, and we can probably put up the pictures. I don't know if they're live or if the pictures that we had from about 30, 40 minutes ago. But there's a fire at the border area between Israel and Lebanon. What is that? What does it mean? What consequences could it have?
Well, Cyril, this fire is after Israeli airplanes strike the open space on the border between Lebanon and Israel. Why? Because a group of Palestinian fighters from the Islamic Jihad infiltrated the the borders and engage in a battle with the Israeli army. So following that, the Israeli army started hitting the open spaces, agricultural lands, in a bid to deny fighters cover just in case there is any future infiltrations. This is one now. And that's why we are seeing all this fire, the huge fires on the borders. Now, there's another thing that's been happening, and I think that's very significant. The Israelis also hit 3 posts for Hezbollah, Lebanese militant group fighting from South Lebanon, and it's the strongest actually group and maybe the only group, Lebanese group, that's present in South Lebanon. Now, over the past 48 hours, the Lebanese front was a space for exchanging messages, and not more than that. And that's why the Lebanese front was a kind of an area that's not part of the conflict. Now, with the situation that's unraveling and the escalation in tension, it seems that the Lebanese front is entering this conflict. Why? Now, just a few minutes ago, Hezbollah, the Lebanese group, issued a statement announcing that several of its fighters were killed today in Israeli shellings. And I'm trying to read from the statement, and that following this incident, the Islamic resistance carried out an initial response by attacking the Pranit barracks, which serves as the command center for the Galilee Brigade, and the Avivim barracks, a command center for the Western Brigade, and that this was done using anti-tank missiles and mortar shells, and that there were some direct hits. So now we're seeing this tension between Hezbollah and Israel mounting gradually and going towards a space where Lebanon is becoming the new, maybe, place where all the eyes are on to see whether this whole conflict is taking a new dimension. Because the dimension with Hezbollah entering this conflict is that it's not anymore just a Palestine-Israel conflict, rather a kind of a semi-regional conflict, and this could be very big.
Absolutely. Ali Hashem reporting from the Israel-Lebanon border area in southern Lebanon. Thank you very much. I want to bring in now Elias Farhat, even as we continue to watch the skies over Gaza, the aftermath of that strike we saw maybe about 5-10 minutes ago. Elias Farhat, you were a former Lebanese army general. I want to follow up on the point that Ali was making. Do you believe that Hezbollah is ramping up its presence in this conflict as we speak?
Let me draw your attention that yesterday Hezbollah sent messages through bombing targets in Shib'a farms, which Lebanon claims that it's a Lebanese territory, while today they bombed Branit and Avivim, which Lebanon does not claim it is a Lebanese territory, but it is an Israeli territory. So the clash of today is completely different, politically at least, from each other. Now, I think
so what's
that
the message?
We are still in. Now, I think that the 5 warriors of Hezbollah who they claimed were killed in a press release, likely, people say likely, they were in an observation post, and it was hit by Israel. And Hezbollah responded by launching rockets and mortars to 2 sites in Israel, in Branit and in Avivim, just moving the rules of engagement to another place. But I think that the concept of the rules of engagement will continue. That's to fire at a target, and the other part, the Israeli, will respond on the source of the fire. There is no idea, I think, and nobody, both sides think about expanding the front of confrontation between each other. So far, it is restricted on definite targets.
Okay, that's very interesting context and analysis. So can I get you then to consider what's happening in the rest of Israel. They are calling up 300,000 reservists, which is unprecedented. We saw earlier today the footage of the troop buildup near Gaza. Now, when he spoke moments ago, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said airstrikes are just the beginning. So when you factor that line in, and you factor in the 300,000 reservists that are being called up, does that say to you that there's definitely going to be a ground offensive? What does it say to you?
Yes, in the news we heard that Netanyahu called President Biden and said that he has no choice but to launch a ground offensive. A ground offensive to be launched, there should be a ground forces in a structure of the brigades or divisions. Now Netanyahu, the Minister of Defense, recalled 300,000, which is unprecedented. They need time in order for ranks and files to go to their right position in each unit in Israel, and then to start establishing the command and control system and the equipment of all the ranks and files, and start, to experience this new structure of units in order to get ready to go to the ground offensive. I think this operation is a routine operation, but it needs the time of at least 2 weeks, of even more than 2 weeks, in order to bring up those 300,000 into organized units that can be pushed to the theater of operations.
But Elias, a ground offensive in Gaza for the Israeli military, that's not favorable terrain for them, is it?
Yes, the ground offensive, I think that they have a contingency plans, pre-prepared plan to be executed by the new units that are recalled from the reserves. Now, the operation will start by retaking the 7 or 8 settlements that are still Hamas fighters clashes with the Israeli forces. And after retaking the 7 settlements, then they will approach to the borders with Gaza, and we will get another situation now. There will be, an axis of progress for the forces, and some forces advanced on many axes. That depends upon the plan of operation, and what the military command aims from this operation is to even to divide Gaza to 2 parts or 3 parts, or to destroy Gaza, or to level it on the ground, as some Ben Gvir and Smotrich say. So we don't know exactly the plan, but we can predict the ground operations targets when Israel retake the 7 settlements that are still face a fight between Hamas fighters and the Israeli army.
Okay, one thing that you're saying that I just hadn't thought of is how long it takes to prepare something like this. So you seem to be suggesting if there is to be a ground offensive, it's probably not going to be tomorrow or even the day after tomorrow. It might take 10 days, 2 weeks to put that plan into action.
I mean, as professional Israeli military command will not get involved in an offensive without bringing many units to a high degree of preparedness to intervene and to establish another line of forces that will follow the front line, which will attack the borders of Gaza, and to establish a reserve in order to use it in case of any troubles in the fight, and to establish a rear area which will be used to support the units while they are advancing. It is some sophisticated military business, which I think that the military command are aware of it. So it's not easy, and it is impossible to see a ground offensive within the coming days. It needs weeks.
It needs weeks. All right. That's interesting perspective, useful perspective. Former Lebanese Army General Elias Farhad, thank you for joining us this hour. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has addressed the nation after a third night of airstrikes on Gaza. He says the strikes have only just begun. He also said that a number of Palestinian gunmen are still inside Israel.
I'm confirming that we have started attacking Hamas. What you're seeing is just the beginning. We have killed many of those fighters. Every place where Hamas is active and working will be completely destroyed, and we will continue to intensify operations.
Let's get more on the latest with Sarah Khairat. You are live in West Jerusalem for us, Sarah. So an important development for Israelis. Their prime minister just addressed the nation. He was calling for national unity, and he compared this to what happened during the Six-Day War in 1967, which is obviously a major date in Israel's history when they gained, militarily conquered a lot of territory. What were the highlights of the Netanyahu speech from where you're standing?
Let's just listen to some of the kind of strong language that's used, that strikes in Gaza are only the beginning. We will intensify our attacks in the coming days. So that's clearly the direction they're heading in. Every place Hamas operates from will turn into ruin. So the kind of language, ruin, and saying that this will resonate with generations to come. And as you were mentioning when we were talking earlier, you were saying about how this is for the region, So he also talked about how they have international support. So the message, even though it was addressed to the Israeli public, but he's also sending a message further outwards to the rest of the world. It's obviously got a huge backing from the Western world, that's for sure. And that kind of strong language is he wants to be seen as the person that's taking this country forward, especially at a time when there's been so much divisions under the coalition government that he was almost forced to form with these far-right ministers and parties to come back into power. And of course, now he is the longest serving prime minister. But just a few weeks ago, there'd been protests in the thousands by Israelis against him and some of the decisions that this government was taking. And of course, a lot of the tension that's been happening in this last year that has been blamed on the kind of force that the current government is pushing towards an expansion of settlements and more demolition and pushing Palestinians out of their home. And as a result, there have been increased tensions since his new government came into power. And now he is able, with such a strong message, to appease the Israeli public as well and let them know that he is taking this forward, especially now that he is being given more powers when it comes to this war clause that we also have been talking about. Just sorry to add to explaining to that to our viewers, which is an article that hasn't been used since the war, October 6th war in 1976, and that's allowing himself and the defense minister to be able to make decisions with regards to this without having to consult the cabinet every time.
But what's the opposition saying about this? Are they willing to sign a blank check for the prime minister and his defense minister to prosecute this war any way they see fit?
Well, Interestingly, we've been hearing and seeing at the moment that they have met today. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that he's pushing now for the opposition to come into the fold. Also a sign of unity, that the country comes together despite their political differences. We know that the opposition leader Yair Lapid a few days ago was the first person to suggest this emergency unity government that would include opposition members. But a couple of the opposition party leaders had stipulated that they wanted certain conditions, if you like, to consider that. And it seems that they would create a war cabinet where the opposition had more involvement in that decision making. The response, it seems, from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is that no conditions will be met as such, that he wants it without any preconditions. So it seems that no decision has been made just yet on an emergency unity government, but it's definitely something that all sides are considering at the moment.
Meanwhile, rockets have continued to be fired during the day from the Gaza Strip. What have you seen of that in and around Jerusalem?
Well, there have been a couple of incidences today, certainly in Jerusalem, with the air sirens, one which was late in the morning, and then I think further sort of late afternoon that lasted a little bit longer. The first round didn't seem to have any damage caused anywhere. They were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome, which is an anti-missile system, and then the second round actually hit 4 different areas, one being in occupied West Bank on an Israeli settlement. Again, as I was mentioning earlier, these Israeli settlements, which are being pushed forward and approved by some ministers in this government, including the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and it seems to have targeted this rocket, this area. There had been a few casualties just south and north of west, rather, I think it was of, north of Jerusalem. But if you actually go out onto the streets, Cyril, they're extremely quiet. People, whether they're Israelis or, of course, Palestinians in occupied East Jerusalem, they're staying indoors. The whole of the old city is closed off from tourists in terms of being able to visit the holy sites. Christmas is a couple of months away, so there are many Christian pilgrims coming from all around the world, and a lot of them have had to leave, and there are evacuation plans in place for many nationals also living here. In fact, I'd been speaking to even some of our colleagues that have grown up in Jerusalem, and they've told me that this is the quietest they've seen, certainly since the pandemic a couple of years ago, with everything being so quiet. And really, it comes down to people just waiting and staying indoors to stay safe because of a fear of tensions between, for example, Israeli settlers or from the Palestinian side.
Sarah Hayrat reporting from West Jerusalem at the moment. Thank you very much, Sarah. I want to go to Imran Khan, Imran, you're in Ramallah, you're in the occupied West Bank. I noted during the speech by Benjamin Netanyahu that he said we are reinforcing all fronts, and that includes Lebanon and, in his words, the West Bank. Is that something that you have seen? Is that something that you can comment on?
Well, Cyril, it's an effective blockade here. The Israelis have cut off not just within the occupied West Bank, but they've actually cut off the occupied West Bank completely to the outside world. There's a border crossing that takes you from the occupied West Bank into Jordan, the Allenby Bridge crossing. That's actually completely shut now. Thousands of people are stranded on either side of that border. They were trying to get across. There was a few hours where they could get across, and then about 2:30 local local time in the afternoon, they shut that down. All of the checkpoints, including the main one of Kalandia, which takes you from Ramallah into Jerusalem, that's been shut down as well. Nobody is being allowed in or out. My cameraman, just to give you a personal example, my cameraman Joseph is actually a resident of Bethlehem. He can't get to Ramallah. Within the occupied West Bank, you can't move around. Effectively, 3.2 million Palestinians have been stopped from moving around within the occupied West Bank. This is, like I say, an effective blockade. But still, there have been protests throughout the day. Some of those protests have actually turned deadly. The death toll and the injury toll seems to be rising as the hours go by. We're hearing that another 5 people have been injured, bringing up to about 45 people since Saturday. At least 17 people have been killed as Israeli forces have opened fire on unarmed protesters. Those protesters, Cyril, are out giving support and showing support to Hamas and the Hamas operation. But there is a sense of nervousness here right now. Everybody's watching those scenes on TV, that we are as well, and they're looking at the bombardment of Gaza. They've never seen anything like it before, and they're worried. They're actually stocking up on food in various parts of the West Bank, particularly in the more remote areas. They're stocking up on food because they simply don't know what might be coming next. But as all of that goes on, there's also another fear from the Palestinians living near those illegal settlements under Israeli law that dot the West Bank. People living near there are afraid of settler attacks as well. So that's where we're at right now. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's words won't come as a surprise, but they'll certainly add to the nervousness here.
Yeah, so people stocking up on food in the occupied West Bank. Israelis told to stock up on basics for 72 hours across Israel, and the only people who can't stock up on anything are the people in Gaza, with the Israeli authorities having tightened their blockade. No food, no water, no electricity entering Gaza there. Imran Khan reporting from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Thank you very much. We're going to take a very short break on Al Jazeera. We come back with continuing coverage of the conflict between Hamas and Israel. Stay tuned.
This next video is an Al Jazeera video from their series, from their ongoing show, Inside Story. It was released on November 14, 2023.
Premature babies in danger of being killed as Israeli attacks cripple most hospitals in Gaza. The World Health Organization says the biggest, Al Shifa, resembles a cemetery. How can this happen to places protected by international law? And what impact is it having on the Palestinians? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tom McRae. Israel's war on Gaza is relentless, with widespread death and destruction and no one safe. The most vulnerable of all, premature babies. Some younger than the 6-week-old war are in immediate danger. The heroism and ingenuity of medical staff is their only protection from Israel's military might raging around them. Hospitals have shut or struggle on without power, with the injured, elderly and young all victims of the war. Two ends of the spectrum of human strength. Tiny babies taken from incubators without power and fighting for life against Israel's military machine that's backed by the US, EU and UK. Palestinians are being denied the right to be treated in the sanctity of hospitals that's protected under international law. But this is ignored by Israel's tanks, bombs and guns. How has the modern world come to this? And why is Gaza's entire health system threatened under Israel's attacks? We'll be asking this and more of our guests in a few moments. But first, this report from Cara Legg.
A fight for life, perhaps with only hours left to live. These are the youngest victims of Israel's war on Gaza. With most hospitals forced to close, surrounded and attacked by Israeli forces, dozens of premature babies in the territory's largest hospital have been transferred to the only areas where electricity is available. But there are no incubators and oxygen supplies have run out. The situation is desperate.
We lost many infants because some were born early. It's extremely difficult to look at them while they're dying, and there's nothing we can do.
And it's not just here, but across Gaza City. All its hospitals are out of service, with no electricity, no water, and critically low medical supplies. They're unable to treat the wounded, despite more patients arriving all the time.
Had over 500 patients come in the last 3 days. And so it's just been unrelenting. Every half an hour there's a new air raid and then there's a new influx of wounded. But we're short on supplies. We've been having to perform excruciatingly painful procedures on wounds of the patients to stop them becoming infected with no analgesia or anesthetic.
But the bombs keep falling. Shelling and gunfire from Israeli forces can be heard in hospitals where thousands of Palestinians are seeking refuge. Many afraid to follow the Israeli military's orders to evacuate, knowing its bombed areas it's said were safe.
We were told go to the south and it'll be safe there. However, every day I'm hearing more ambulances come to the hospital. I'm seeing more people take their loved ones to the graveyard. I'm seeing more children injured, more people amputated. Every day it seems that the south is getting hit more.
Israel has refused to stop its attacks, claiming Hamas has command bases under the hospital, an accusation the group denies, and doctors, health officials and witnesses also reject as false. Thousands of people have fled the violence that seems to intensify every day, leaving all of those in Gaza vulnerable, with nowhere left to go. Cara Legg for Inside Story.
Human Rights Watch says Israel's attacks on hospitals in Gaza should be investigated as war crimes. More than half of the 35 in the Strip are no longer functioning, and the rest are overwhelmed. Israeli shelling and ground attacks have intensified around hospitals in Gaza City and the north, with several being hit directly. The Gaza Health Ministry says all those in the north are now out of service. The largest two, Al-Quds and Al-Shifa, are surrounded by Israeli forces and have shut down. Israeli snipers have been firing at anyone near Al-Shifa, trapping thousands inside. Well, let's bring in our guests now. In London is Dr. Omar Abdel-Manan, co-founder of Gaza Medic. In Ramallah is Bushra Khalidi, policy lead in the occupied Palestinian territory and Israel at Oxfam. And in Cairo is Dr. Mads Gilbert, medical head and professor at the Clinic of Emergency Medicine at University Hospital of North Norway. He's also author of Night in Gaza and has worked with medical teams there. A warm welcome to all three of you. Thank you so much for being with us here on Inside Story. Dr. Omar, if I could begin with you, please. As a paediatric neurologist, as a child specialist, when you see those images of the premature babies huddled together with no incubators, no oxygen, can you just explain how dire the situation is for them?
Honestly, I saw these videos as I was coming into the studio this afternoon. I received them on my phone from a colleague just before it made the breaking news. This is... I'm lost for words. I mean, every night, every day, we have been receiving testimonies and messages from Gazan doctors through Gaza Medic Voices, our online social media platform. And every day it sounds like things are getting worse. And every day I think, how can things be actually worse? This image of something to the approximation of 15 premature babies all cuddled together, not even cuddled together, laying together in one cot with no heat, no incubator, no oxygen, no fluids, is absolutely horrific. And this is part of the dehumanization of Palestinians to the point that the Israelis have turned these babies into what they look like mice. They look like rats, essentially. And I'm sorry to use that term, but that is what it looks like. They have treated them like animals, and to the point that they are sitting in a cot all together with no life support, which is essential. I work in a large teaching hospital in London. I've worked in many of the largest neonatal units in London, some of the biggest tertiary units, and every one of these babies should be being looked after in a separate incubator with oxygen, with fluids, with one-to-one nursing, and yet they have all been put in. And this is a direct result of Israeli war crimes and Israeli bombardment on these hospitals.
Is there any hope that they will survive?
At this current rate, many of these babies rely on the incubator. These babies were born prematurely. They need to be in an environment that is like the womb, which is what the incubator provides them with. Keeping them warm in that environment is almost impossible. The aluminium foil is an ingenious way of trying to keep them alive for a short period of time. Many of these babies that will survive will be left with lifelong chronic conditions, chronic conditions of the lung, chronic conditions of the heart, things that are completely reversible. And in 2023, it should not be acceptable for babies born into this world to be in this situation. But that is the reality of the Israeli war machine, of the continual destruction and targeting systematically of healthcare workers, healthcare facilities, things that we see now that make us think of the Middle Ages. This is medieval style medicine, resulting from 100% man-made human catastrophe. That is 100% man-made by the Israelis. And frankly, those babies and those children and those killed and wounded, that is blood on their hands, and the blood on the hands of every Western leader who has not stood up and had the courage or bravery to stand up and say, what kind of disgusting conditions are we putting these people through? Yeah. How many more children, how many more premature babies do they want to see in these incubators? How many more children do they want to see dead? Is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? What is the magic number for these politicians? Mr. Sunak, Mr. Biden, every one of these leaders should be ashamed of themselves.
We'll get on to the international response in just a moment. But Dr. Meds, I know you've spent many years working in hospitals within Gaza, and I'm sure that you've seen some extremely tough circumstances. But could you have ever imagined what we are seeing right now play out?
Not in my wildest fantasy would I imagine that a state governmental army would so viciously attack the healthcare system, which is supposed to be under regulation of international law. What we see to our eyes here is the most graphic example of medical apartheid, because this would never have been allowed to happen with white, blue-eyed, blonde babies in the Western world. This is so graphically showing us what the occupation and the attack on Gaza is all about. It is about restoring the old colonial rule over people in their own land based on violence, weapons, and a deep racism. These babies can be saved. The medical staff in Shifa is top-notch. I've been working with them for more than 20 years. These incubators, they were made to save lives. I'm an emergency doctor. I know that the lifeline for people in the ICU or in the incubator is oxygen. What do the occupation army do? They damage the oxygen providing system in Shifa. They destroy it, so there will be no oxygen. What do? They deny the hospital medical supplies. And this is happening as these lame leaders are sitting watching. And I'd like to take up one point. To me, this is not new. The magnitude is new, but the Israeli army has attacked healthcare for as long as I have known their actions. I was in Beirut in 1982 during the invasion and the siege and the bombing. They attacked ambulances. They bombed psychiatric hospitals. And also during the Intifada, they attacked the healthcare. And now during the attacks in 2006, 9, 12, and 14, the UN reports are massive on these attacks on healthcare. So the fact is that the Israeli impunity has been total when it comes to being kept accountable for attacking healthcare. So I think they actually believe that it's a legal target. They can do what they want. And to hear President Biden now being concerned about the hospitals, He is the one who let this pit bull loose. And he is the one who is, among many presidents, have shielded the Israeli occupation forces to be held accountable for these very systematic attacks on primary healthcare, hospital healthcare, ambulances, staff, and supply lines, all of which is illegal.
Yeah, Bushra, just staying with this, I know Oxfam still has many people within Gaza, and it must be incredibly difficult to watch on as these scenes unfold. And despite these pictures coming out, and despite, I guess, there being so much clear evidence at the human cost to this war, seemingly nothing is being done, nothing is stopping, the shelling is continuing, isn't it? How hard is that to watch on, knowing that you have colleagues working in Gaza at this point in time?
Well, it's not just colleagues. I have colleagues. I have all my in-laws in Gaza right now, and a lot of friends. It is harrowing and heart-wrenching, and it really feels like we're in a living nightmare, trying to do something, but we feel completely helpless and powerless because Israel has decided to close the borders, and it has closed the borders for the last 16 years on Gaza because it's held Gaza under siege. And under its military rule for this entire time, including the West Bank, and so it's extremely demotivating to know that we can't go and support our colleagues, because right now our colleagues, though they're supposed to be operating and delivering aid and supporting this response, we're at a halt because there's no fuel and because we're not allowed to enter and because medical teams can't access the Gaza Strip. And so we've got 2.2 million people, half of which are children, completely trapped, unable to leave, unable to go anywhere, and we're starving them to death. We're bombing them to death, and we're making sure that wherever they came from is now uninhabitable. We've got 60% of Gaza that has been completely destroyed. Where are these people supposed to live? Where are these people supposed to go back to? Where are they supposed to go to school? Where are they supposed to get healthcare from? Where are they supposed to get their bread from? Many bakeries have been also bombed. So it's not just the healthcare system that is completely collapsed. It's every single sector in Gaza that has completely collapsed.
Yeah.
And what is to come next is really what we need to be worried about.
Dr. Mads, I see you're wanting to interject there. What would you like to add?
We're watching premature babies dying. I just talked to the Minister of Health in Gaza on the phone in Shifa, and he said, we don't have light. We use the mobile phones. We do surgery now in mobile phone light. We cannot get out. We have tons. We have a mountain of garbage. We have 100 killed, decomposing bodies in the hospital. The morgue has been warm for many days. They are decomposing, and they are shooting at everything moving outside. Listen, all of this misery is man-made, as Dr. Umar said. And the point is, it can be reversed this afternoon. It can be stopped this afternoon. The bombing, the attacks on the hospitals, we could re-establish water, supply lines, medicine, everything the civilians need, if only there is put pressure on Israel. So I don't understand this world, because when Russia attacked Ukraine, it took half a week with sanctions and embargo and all sorts of political pressure to reduce the effects of the occupation, and then giving more weapon to the Ukrainian people fighting occupation, which is another story. But my point is that all of what we see can be stopped today. The bombing can be stopped. The pipelines of water and the electricity and the fuel can be restored, but it's not done. And why? Because these are the Palestinian people, and they are not worth the same as the white people in the north. I calculated there are 31 Israeli children who were killed. Unfortunately, no Israeli child should be killed. So far, there are 6,000 Palestinian children killed. That means for every Israeli child killed, the Israeli army has killed almost 200 Palestinian children, or to be precise, 194. And that ratio, that number, is what apartheid describes here.
And still we're not seeing many world leaders call for a ceasefire, despite those numbers continuing to rise every single day. Dr. Omar, I want to go back to the hospitals there. The WHO has called Al-Shifa, basically saying that it has turned into a cemetery. We see decomposing corpses and there's basically no way to preserve or remove them. Mountains of waste, of medical waste, is now piling up as well. How big a problem does all of that pose?
I think this is the end game for a hospital that has become a cemetery within a concentration camp, an open-air concentration camp, which is what Gaza is. And when you see a healthcare system collapse, and I have never seen that in my lifetime, and I hope to never see it again, but when you see this happen, and you see hospitals decomposing, literally at the seams with bodies, 60,000 people were sheltering at Al-Shifa Hospital. We as healthcare professionals in the UK were standing at a vigil on Friday evening outside the residence of Mr. Sunak, calling for a ceasefire. In the middle of that vigil, we had a message come through from a doctor, a surgeon inside Al-Shifa Hospital that was sent to the mobile phone of Mr. Rishi Sunak through our sources. And it said, it begged the world for intervention. It said, we are surrounded, we are besieged. There are tanks outside shooting at us. We cannot get out. Please ask your government to provide us with a humanitarian aid corridor for medical staff and injured patients. And what did the West do? What did Mr. Sunak do? They turned a blind eye like they have done at every other point. The next stage after these direct deaths is essentially excess mortality. These decomposing bodies will enter the water system. That will mean infections will spread, waterborne infections. I am astounded that cholera cases are not already being reported in Gaza. We saw this in Haiti. We saw this in natural disasters. This is from Mother Nature. This is a man-made disaster of the same level, of the same criticality that we saw in Haiti. What I want to add to Dr. Mads Gilbert's comment is Israel, and this is also adding to what Dr. Bushra said, is these the Israelis for 17 years have blockaded Gaza from air, land and sea. They controlled everything and they still control everything. If they could control the oxygen going into Gaza, they would. And the irony is they are now. They are controlling the oxygen reaching the lungs of these premature babies. They are literally cutting off the oxygen supply. And if you hear an urgency in my voice and you hear me upset and emotional, it is because as a doctor who looks after sick children and is an advocate for the safeguarding and the well-being of children around the world, I cannot believe the monstrosity of allowing children to be in these situations and in this. What have these children done to deserve this? What have their parents done? What is the next step? I mean, I'm just astounded when I look at these images. It is absolutely heartbreaking. And like I said, it is just the end game for a collapsing healthcare system that will take decades to rebuild.
Yeah. Bushra, can you just explain to us how compelling is the evidence that Israel is carrying out war crimes, given all of this, by deliberately targeting, it seems, targeting hospitals?
International law is very clear, and Israel's duties and obligations are extremely clear. They are the main occupier, therefore they have a duty and an obligation, and there's a nuance between that. It's an added responsibility on the Israeli government to protect civilian population. When we say protect civilian population, it's ensuring that it has access to basic services and necessities, which they don't. By closing the borders, by shutting off water, by shutting off electricity, by not allowing fuel into the strip, and by cutting off communication lines, by targeting hospitals, targeting bakeries, targeting necessary civilian infrastructure. These are serious breaches of international law and international humanitarian law more specifically. And these, yes, indeed, may amount to war crimes. But again, I do not make that legal determination. I point to the law and remind of the parties of their clear duties and obligation. And Israel has decided to collectively punish 2.2 million civilian people, and collective punishment is a war crime.
And an orthopaedic surgeon who's working in Gaza has said that patients with injuries up to the moderate level are having surgery without anaesthesia because of a lack of medical supplies, basically having to choose. who gets anaesthesia and who doesn't. He said that the pain experienced by the patients during the surgical interventions without anaesthesia is beyond what humanity on this earth can endure. Can you just help explain to us, describe to us how difficult this is, not only just for the patients, but also for the doctors and nurses that are carrying out these surgeries at the same time?
Well, the whole situation is unbearable for any one of us, inside or outside. And I'd like to correct this image that Palestinian doctors are heartless and do major surgery without anesthesia. They don't. But there is a lack of local anesthetics, and that's right. So some of the minor procedures may be painful, more painful than needed. I just talked to a colleague in one of the hospitals in the south yesterday, and we discussed how they could apply, for example, simple ketamine anesthesia for the most painful procedures. But I underline, they do not do like laparotomies or cesarean sections or major surgery without proper general anesthesia. They are human doctors. But I'd like to make a comment on this collapse of the healthcare system that we have been discussing for 4 weeks now, every day. What is actually collapsing is the morality of the Western governments, the morality of the Western world, the morality of the Israeli army. That's the most important collapse, because everything we thought we had gained with establishing humanity and human rules between us has been completely destroyed by Israel these 4 weeks. The trust between the global north and the global south has been completely smashed. I'm in Africa now. I talk to my Arab friends and my African friends. They have lost all trust in the West and in the US. And these small babies, these 38 prematures that are dying now for lack of oxygen and warmth, electricity, oxygen. We, the Norwegian Aid Committee, we installed these oxygen concentration machines in Shifa and many other hospitals 15 years ago to make them independent because of the Israeli siege. What did the Israeli army do? They turn off the light and they shoot to damage the oxygen machines. Oxygen is life. And this is another example of the sadism in the way they attack the healthcare system. And when the Israeli spokesperson the other night said, oh, we will go in and save these 38 premature babies, would you let somebody who had killed 6,000 of your children take care of the neonates? Would you let somebody who's bombing hospitals take care of your patients? I mean, this collapse of morality and an application of international law is very, very serious because it's affecting all of us.
Omar, I know that you've been discussing the situation with medical professionals in Gaza. I mean, these medics also have to think of their own safety and their families' safety as well. But as we've seen, so many people are determined to stay, to continue working, to trying to save those that they can. Why is that when their own lives are clearly in danger here?
Because they chose this profession and they took a Hippocratic oath, which was do no harm and do the best you can for your patients. And the doctors inside Gaza are the heroes and superheroes. And they are the ones who have decided that for them, the sanctity of the life of their patients comes first and foremost. The captain doesn't leave the ship until the ship sinks. That is the way they think about it. That is the way they operate. And that is the way many doctors with any form of humanity would operate. I don't know if I was in that situation how I would react, frankly, but what they are doing is commendable. And that, you know, they have said time and time again, we would rather be bombed with our patients than leave them to die in the darkness, in fear and in terror. I want to add to what Dr. Mads said regarding that situation with the continual bombardment and the lack of humanity. The Israeli Defense Force and the Israeli government started to turn off communications to perform atrocities in the dark from very early on. And we saw a hospital being bombed, we saw hospitals being threatened, we saw the images live on Al Jazeera as if we were waiting to watch a hospital being bombed on live TV. That is the level of inhumanity we have reached in this world, where we have to watch it on TV and no one can intervene from the Western world. The reality is that we are now bearing witness to these war crimes, frankly war crimes, in any textbook of humanitarian law. I'm not a human rights lawyer, but for me, I don't know what else would amount to war crimes. And we're watching this now being done with the audacity. They don't even care about cutting the communications anymore. They've seen they can do it, and the world continues to allow them to do it. They have reached a level of audacity, a level of arrogance that is beyond anything in the last 50 years. I cannot recall a conflict where 5,000 children have been wiped out in less than 6 weeks since World War II. I cannot recall anything to that extent. And they are doing it with impunity, they are doing it with arrogance, and the Western world is just as complicit as every one of those government officials in Israel.
Dr. Meds, we've only got about a minute or so left. I know you said before that this could all be stopped immediately by the Israelis. You just stop the bombing. What chance do you think that there is now that it will just stop, that it has gone too far?
I hope that there is sufficient political pressure to stop this nightmare for all of us, and most of all for the people of Gaza. Right now, I just talked to the Minister of Health, Dr. Youssef Abrish in Shifa Hospital. He said they have 3 died of the premature 38. 2 of them are in critical, dying situation now. In addition, they have 700 patients in Shifa. They have 250 staff, and they still have 2,500 internally displaced persons. All of these people are in life danger now. The only thing we can demand now is an immediate stop and to turn on light, food, water, and fuel supplies to Gaza. And I urge every single governmental boss, prime minister, president in Europe, and also my last hope is that Biden now actually says, now we have reached the red line. If we don't do that, what is going to be the next? Are they going to kill everyone? Are we going to see a new standard of racism that is being applauded by these deplorable leaders in the West who don't have the balls to stand up to Israel and the United States?
Dr. Meds, Bushra and Dr. Omar, we really do appreciate all of your time, all of your insight in what is just a harrowing, heartbreaking story. Thank you so much for joining us here on Inside Story. Well, thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Tom McRae, and the whole team here, bye for now.
I'm not sure how to close this up. I'm going to end this with a video from Jason Unruh, the Maoist rebel. I don't know what else to say. This last video, which is being presented, is November 10th, 2023. And I assure you that the next videos will not be like rage fits here. But this is more of a rage video. Anyway, like I said, this last part came out on November 10th, 2023.
Who is Hanania Naftali? If you've seen this guy before, then you know that he's the Israeli out on social media, whitewashing every single Israeli crime and has become a big personality. You may remember him as the guy who posted about Israel bombing the hospital, and then when found out he's not supposed to actually acknowledge that, he went ahead and deleted the tweet and said he made the mistake. Hi, I'm Jason Unruh. This is Maoist Rebel News. If you're interested in news and commentary from a Marxist perspective, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And on top of that, don't forget to hit the bell notification so that you'll be notified every time a video is uploaded. This is Hanania Naftali. He's currently the #1 social media personality, blatantly false Zionist propagandist, like saying Hamas is ISIS, which is outright idiotic considering that they hate each other. And the only purpose for doing so is to falsely associate Hamas with ISIS. After he posted the tweet justifying the Israeli bombing of a Gazan hospital, killing hundreds of innocent people, he retracted it, claiming, "I mistakenly shared this information. I apologize for this error, as the IDF does not bomb hospitals." You may have noticed that this guy just suddenly came out of nowhere to be a big social media star, and all he's managed to do is blatantly lie in favor of Israel, essentially, just whitewashing his crimes and making an absolute travesty out of what he alleges to be journalism. But as it turns out, this man is not quite who he claims to be. You could call him a pathological liar. He's denied Palestine ever had a state, which is false. He claims Israel never started a war, which is a massive lie. In another, Facebook even calls him a liar. He posted pictures of the same girl being rescued in Gaza 3 times. In fact, the photos are from the phony medical white helmets in Syria. In fact, his lies are so massive he can't even keep straight where he was born. That's right, his own history was fabricated in order to justify his Zionist positions. On October 15th, he falsely claimed to have been born and raised in Israel.
هلكت وتربيت في إسرائيل. أعذروني لغة العربية مش كتير تمام. أنا ولا بحياتي اتربيت على كل الإسلام. عرب أو فلسطينيين.
In 2014, he claimed to be native-born Israeli Jew. The truth is, he's actually from a family settler colonist from Russia who falsely claimed to be refugees. According to an investigation by Press TV, in fact, they were smuggled out of Russia by Zionist agents in the Jewish Agency, one of the 4 so-called national institutions of the Zionist entity, which is responsible for encouraging settler colonists to occupy Palestine. Born in Safed, he grew up in what the Zionists call Samaria, an illegal settlement built on the Palestinian land occupied by the Israeli regime. More recently, he is claimed to be a civilian living under the threat of Hamas rockets. Him and his wife, India, an American settler colonist, filmed themselves in their personal bunker on October 7th. Naftali was in the occupation forces terrorizing Palestinians during 2014, Operation Protective Edge. He was also involved in the regime operations in the Golan to patch up fires, including from the Nusra Front, the Syrian affiliate Al-Qaeda, and send them back to the regime change operation targeting the Syrian government. He has remained in the occupation forces reserve ever since. Netanyahu hired him in 2018 as a social media advisor, and when he married his wife India, Netanyahu himself gave a speech that is still available on the internet. He can't even keep his story straight. Interesting how when he posted about the hospital bombing on the 17th, he was claiming to be a civilian, but in his other social media posts, he says he was called up to fight in the IDF on October 7th. On October 14th, he appeared in a video in uniform talking about he was in the IDF Digital Media Task Force to spread misinformation that Twitter and Elon Musk aren't blocking.
Shalom, everybody. I've been called up from the front line to a different front, the digital warfare. The Prime Minister has called me to join this task force here behind me that is fighting around the clock to fight and defend Israel in the media. There is a war between good and evil. And Israel's battle is your battle as well, because there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of hate, blind hate, anti-Semitism, and lies.
And they've taken to Facebook to literally spread neo-Nazi propaganda. Yes, this right here, literally what neo-Nazis post. This is an actual hate crime. If a neo-Nazi had posted this, they'd be arrested. But it's perfectly legal for Israel to do so. Israel is allowed to conduct hate speech according to Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. Now, your social media accounts are filled with absolute terrible lies. One of them being that Hamas is responsible for the water being cut off to Gaza, which is blatantly false considering that it is Israel who has their hand on the switch. It's them who can turn the water on and off. It is Israel who blatantly chose to block water from a civilian population committing a war crime. Or what about this gem? A post of his that was removed because it was the most blatant hate speech he's ever made. This is the kind of hate speech you'd see on 4chan or Stormfront. Yet CNN, Fox, and the rest of the mainstream media just ignores it. The Western media has wholly and completely ignored the crimes of Israel and have openly supported the genocide of Palestine. Well, basically, that's going to do it for this video. If you still support the Israeli regime at this point, you So that's all for now. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. And if you are so inclined, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to help produce more videos like these, then I suggest going over to my Patreon and making a monthly donation. Even something as small as $1 a month certainly helps. Thank you for watching, and free Palestine.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.